Welcome to the 5th grade curriculum preview for the 5th 6 weeks. As you've noticed in the SMORE that you have your overview, make sure you have that downloaded so as I go through you can highlight and maybe stop the video with the pause button and discuss what you need to discuss, and then resume the presentation by clicking on the arrow for the video. Let's get started. Your lead standard this 6 weeks is Figure 511E, Comprehension of Informational Text and Expository Text. Here's where students are analyzing, making inferences, and drawing conclusions, and providing evidence from the text. They are synthesizing and making logical connections between ideas within a text and across 2 or 3 texts representing similar or different genres. The process skills that you're going to have that partner with that, as always, is you have independent reading. I want to really make sure that you have this in your daily workstations, that every child is reading at their independent reading level with books that they can read for that first workstation or one workstation in your classroom during reading workshop. They need to have some type of accountability, like a reading response or a log that they talk about something that they've learned. Especially, you might want to have them pick a book and then pick a genre that mirrors with it and do something around the lead standard where they have to complete an assignment. So make sure that's a literacy workstation. Media literacy is there. They are to consider the difference in techniques used in media. That's looking at commercials and documentary and news and how they use those words, images, graphics, and sounds to impact the meaning. Your genres for this 6 weeks are poetry. They're expected to compare the treatment of a similar theme in a poem and a literary text. That's going back to that lead standard of looking at a poem and how a literary text, how the theme is the same. In drama, they are expected to compare the treatment of a similar theme in a play or script and a literary text, once again going back to that lead standard. Informational text and persuasive text, they are expected to recognize exaggerated, contradictory, or misleading statements in a text. Those are your genres. Your word study, once again, as you're spelling, you're looking at your roots, your Latin and Greek roots, playing with words, doing those things that help them to really, when they come to a word they don't know, look at the meaning of the word and looking at the makeup of the word. Once again, they're still having 10 to 12 vocabulary words out of authentic text. Let's take a look at what your instruction will look like with that then. You're going to be using your do actions always speak louder than words. That is your poster for your grade level. You're going to examine techniques writers use to make their message convincing. Use narrative and informational text that create opportunities to do the things that you notice, recognize exaggerated, contradictory, or misleading statements, make inferences, and draw conclusions about motives of the writer. One of the focus lessons that you need to do if you haven't used SOAP's Think Sheet already is model and practice the SOAP analysis at least twice a week with kids. This really helps kids to see within the text everything they need to think about. 3 kinds of thinking with complex text. Let me talk to you a few minutes about 3 kinds of thinking. 3 kinds of thinking needs to be modeled by you in a focus lesson, and it needs to be taught as a system, that all 3 parts of how we use 3 kinds of thinking is used as a system. You need to be using complex text as you model that with kids. It's something that's high above their reading level so that they can see how they use a strategy when they come to text that is more complex. Then in their workstations or in the work you have them do the 3 kinds of thinking with a text that they are reading. You can use the 3 kinds of thinking note-taking. I'm going to attach that in some more so you can see that resource. You'll also find it in the Norma Jackson resources in the yearly content. But that's a good gradual release of responsibility in using 3 kinds of thinking. Now, if you'll turn to page 7 in your overview, I want to talk about that now we've taught every skill. It has been, have addressed every skill or every standard. Now is the time to really take a look at where your kids are with what they know. And so I've listed here in the overview, and I've had them on the slide, about all of the different standards that really need to be reinforced and made sure that the kids understand and have a deep understanding of this. If you have Mentoring Minds and you use your online component, you can use their reports to see where certain kids are weak in certain skills, and maybe in their small groups use that standard and guide your small guided reading groups with the standards that they are lacking or the skills they're lacking there. So take a look at that on page 7 about all of those standards that we really need to reteach and hone in on before STAR. The reading expectations for this 6 weeks are, as always, once again, that independent reading time, that they have 300 minutes in their independent reading level. Then they have 300 minutes with you in your small group, where you are having a little bit more complex text for them, but where they can read it a little. We want them reading with comprehension and fluency. And then we want to make sure that they're synthesizing and making logical connections. When you use the SOAP Think Sheet and when you do 3 kinds of thinking with them, they do this type of reading. You need to be completing 1 to 3 weekly reading responses. So that's a great ticket for you with your workstations, that those things that they're reading, they need to be responding to. And here's just a note that you see in your overview. It's on page 8. We just want to make sure that all your workstations keep students purposely engaged in reading authentic text. They require them to apply a skill taught in a focused lesson. It usually is reading and writing. Those are your best ways to practice the skills that you've taught. Maintain a routine that allows your student to do a cold read or do a close reading procedure with them, where they read a book that is a close reading and do a close reading with them to see if they are using those strategies in our 3 kinds of thinking. I want to remind you that the CBA Blueprint is up in the yearly content. You'll see that it's attached down there. On the related resources, you'll need to click on Reading. I have also included the Guided Reading Comprehension Scaffolds, which is a great tool to use. So your blueprints are there. One of the things I want to talk to you about, and I know you do this in your class, but as we looked at the CBA data, we came across and came to the conclusion that maybe students weren't practicing the best strategies of taking an assessment. So we came together and we decided that maybe there was a type of strategy that we could teach them. It's a modified close reading, and so that when they get to that test, that it is so deep in their brain that they'll do this. First of all, we want students to read the entire passage. Just read it. Read the whole passage. Then go back and read it a second time. And during this reading, they annotate each paragraph from maybe the main idea or circling keywords and the things that are mattering the most in that paragraph. Then they read it, they identify what was the author's purpose for writing this piece. And if it's an expository, if there are subheadings, consider under each section, why did the author put that subheading and what's the purpose? A lot of our questions on STAR are about author's purpose. Then students read and answer the questions using that text evidence that they've noted in the passage. I hope that helps, and hope that will maybe give them a strategy to use during the test. Let's take a look at writing. Just want to applaud you for writing every day with your kids. It is so important for them going into middle school that you continue that. They're going to be writing really expository, because it's about, in 5th grade, it's about them writing through the content. We want to look at the drafts, and they're expected to generate an effective plan. Then in developing, they're expected to include a concluding paragraph that strengthens the central message. So you're really doing concluding paragraphs this 6 weeks. We want them to improve fluency in their writing by varying their sentence structures. And then we always want them proofreading for capitalization of proper nouns. The genres that they're wanting is the multi-paragraph essays to convey information about what's being studied in science, social studies, and math. So this is a great way for you to integrate. So whatever they're learning in social studies, help that apply to your reading. Or if you teach science in reading and writing, do your science or math. Also, we want them to write a persuasive essay to establish a position. So that's another genre we'd like for them to do this 6 weeks. In the conventions that you're going to be teaching, it's verbs, irregular verbs, and active verbs, and then indefinite pronouns. And with writing legibly, we want them to always write legibly and continue to use cursive to write. We want them to capitalize and punctuate, but you're going to be focusing on the capitalization of organizations this 6 weeks. So what do your writing focuses look like? You're really going to be teaching conclusions, and in the overview you're going to see how you would teach a conclusion, some great ideas about how to do that. That is on page 6 of your overview. It gives you some pointers about how to effectively do those conclusions. So on page 6 you want to look at about how that is. We're so grateful that you're writing with them every day. We want to give them an opportunity to look at the organizational patterns that writers use. This will help in your reading, as they need to focus on cause and effect, compare and contrast, description, sequential order, classification scheme, and logical order. So giving them opportunities to look at that. And if you'll look at the clarifier on that particular standard, you'll see that I've given you a resource that might help you to have those lessons with them. Your grammar. Active voice means the subject of the sentence performs the action. For example, Mom made a chocolate cake. Writing is stronger when the sentences use active voice. What I would suggest to you about that is find great examples of active voice in the mentor text that you're reading, and examine how authors have used active voice, and then have them play around in sentences using active voice, and then take it into their writing. The same thing with irregular verbs and indefinite pronouns. The last slide, I want to give a shout out to the digital learning specialist. They represented BISD well at TCEA last week, and they did a presentation on getting excited about reading with iMoody. So you will use your scanner thing, or use the tiny URL code and put it in a browser, and take a look at how people in Birdville, teachers in Birdville, are using iMoody to really get kids excited about reading. As you plan today, if you need me, you can call my extension at 5805 or email me. I'd be glad to help you. I hope you have a great day. Happy planning.